This is Alex, and welcome to Barely Braided, where we're taking a deep, deep dive into foster care, adoption, and all things parenting, even the sticky stuff. Welcome to episode 37. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Amanda Wall. She's an adoptive and biological mom, as well as the author of a new children's book called Finding Family in a Faraway Land. She advocates for adoptees as their voice is often unheard, and she wrote the book with her daughter's permission to share their story in hopes of empowering other children and educating families. Hey, Amanda.
Hi. Thanks for having me, Alex.
Yeah, of course. What's going on?
Not much. It's a rainy day here in Colorado, so I'm just kind of enjoying the calm weather.
Yeah, I hear you. So what part of Colorado are you in?
I'm in Denver.
Okay. I don't think I've ever visited Denver. However, our company's headquarters just moved there, and I have only ever heard great things about it, that it's beautiful.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, we like to ski and we like to bike, and it's just sunny all the time. So I don't know if I'll ever move. I really like it.
That's so good. Were you born and raised in Denver?
No, I am a Midwest, born in Indiana, and we used to take the big, I don't know if you had one of these, but the like Econo Lodge vans.
Yes.
Out here when we were little to go skiing. And then I just fell in love as a kid and said, I'm going to move there when I grow up. So here I am.
That's so good for like remembering and following your dreams and actually following through. So we didn't have the big van, but we had the station wagon with the wood panels.
Oh yeah. That's the best too.
Yeah. And I'm often thinking too about how, like, of course we weren't at the time required to wear seatbelts. We just kind of like hung out in the back or even like the area behind the seats. And I'm just thinking how much has changed since then.
Oh my gosh, right? And you know, it's funny as we get into talking about my family, those rules don't exist in India where my girls are from. And so going back there, going to India and driving around with them was like a total flashback. Like they just run and you're like, sit down. No, you need a seatbelt. No, we need, and then like the kids are like, no way, you're not going to strap me in. It's so crazy.
That is crazy too, because if you post a child in the US, like their photo, let's say on the internet or on a mom group, you will get annihilated if the chest clip is a centimeter too low.
Oh, absolutely. Or if a child tries to ride in the front seat and they're not the age or the weight or the size. Yeah, no, it's a totally different world.
Yeah, they have to be like 15 before you stop putting them in a booster.
That's so true.
Well, so along those lines, tell us about your family.
Sure. So I have 4 kids and a husband. And my oldest 2 are our biological children. And then my youngest 2 are adopted from India. And they are biological sisters. So We went from 2 to 4 overnight, if you will. And yeah, it's been awesome. So we've been, I guess, a family, the 6 of us, for the last 3.5 years.
So the older 2 are how old?
So my son is 11, and it's actually my daughter's birthday today, and she just turned 9. Yeah.
Oh, happy 9th birthday.
And her name is Alex, so you can...
Yeah, so when we first met over the computer, we talked about the crazy similarities with the naming. So not only that, you also have an Ari, like I do.
Yeah. So Ari's my youngest, and she's 6. So then, so it's 11, 9, 7, 6.
That is so cool. So how old were your biological children when you started thinking about adoption?
Oh my gosh, they were itty bitty. We actually started this process, I think my son was 4 and my daughter was maybe 2. And initially we were going to adopt from Ethiopia because we have biracial kids in our family, my niece and nephews, and their dad is from Ghana. And so we started the process early thinking, sometimes it takes years. Mm-hmm. And it did. We went about 3 years with no match, and then the program shut down entirely. So we switched countries.
Wow. Okay. So lots of questions,
Sure.
especially because we haven't talked a whole lot about international adoption on the podcast. We've talked about it a little bit, but I'm wondering the term that I've heard is Hague Convention. What do you know about that?
So that's the accreditation that the agency has to have for a legal adoption in these different countries. So you always want to go through an agency that is Hague accredited, if you will. That means that they've followed all these rules and guidelines and are going by the book as far as how they match you, how they follow up on researching everything, how they go through the government steps, if you will. So that's what that means.
Okay. And so from what I understand, the same regulations apply to the agencies in other countries, which means that there are only certain countries that American citizens can adopt from. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. The last time we spoke, I was looking it up on the internet, and it was interesting because some of the Hague-approved countries have been around for years and years and years, and we've been, I guess, like having a partnership with them forever. And then others have been added just as recently as like 2018, 2019, I think. I'll have to pull it up
Sure.
when you're getting more into your story. But what led you to think about adoption?
You know, it's something my husband and I always talked about. It was weird. Like, we talked about this when we were dating. I think the conversation comes up like, how do you envision your family? And would you ever consider growing your family through adoption? And that's just something that we both had an interest in. We both kind of had a desire. We both, I don't know why. Isn't that strange? And then as we had kids, the topic came up, and we thought, well, yeah, let's do it. Like, I don't feel like I need to have another child to grow our family. And so that's the avenue that we took.
Wow, that's so interesting. So I'm looking up the approved countries, and it looks like the whole procedure must have begun in 1988 because a majority of the countries, it says they've joined on 7/1/88. So that's when most of them start. And then there are 101 approved countries, and the most recently added were Armenia and Jamaica in 2018 and 2019.
Oh, wow. I don't know anybody that's adopted from there.
No.
Really
Yeah. And
cool.
that, I mean, in the whole scope of things, those are pretty new to the approved list, it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So what made you choose India?
Sure. You know, when the whole Ethiopia thing was falling apart, we just kind of looked at you kind of take a step back. And our agency had suggested a couple countries. And we thought, you know what, we have a lot of Indian friends. We resonate with the culture. It's such a fun, rich, lively culture. There's a pretty healthy population of Indians where we live. So we know there's going to be a lot of great resources and ways to immerse the culture into our lives. And our friends were really encouraging and supportive about it. And so it just seemed like all the pieces just fell into place for us in regards to choosing that country.
Okay, so you decided that you were looking to adopt from India. You found an agency that worked with adoption agencies in India. Then what?
Well, so how it works is they don't actually work with adoption agencies in India. There's a system called CARA, which is the government-run organization that everybody has to go through to adopt in India. So they will register you through CARA, and then they have an in-country representative that will help match you with your child, and then also like meet you when you go to India. That's who you send your dossier to, which I don't know. Did you have to do one of those for fostering?
No, I don't even know what that is.
It's like, it's just this enormous binder, and it's like a part-time job, but you fill out like information about your family, pictures about your kids. It's just oh my gosh, letters to the orphanage, letters to the government. It's such a massive packet that you mail to India. And then from all of that information, they kind of help choose the child or children that they think are the best fit for your family. So, yeah, it's crazy. It's really cool.
So where are the children living that are waiting to be matched?
So our girls were in an orphanage. Yeah, so they were in an orphanage over there. It was called a Shishu Gruha, which means children's home. But you can get matched, I mean, in any orphanage, right? So the representative will fly to meet you where you fly into to go meet your children. And then they help you go through all the steps that you have to go through with the government and getting your passport and your exit permit and all that stuff to leave.
So you went to India the one time to pick them up?
No, we went twice.
Okay.
We actually took our older two, which was a huge gamble. They were, oh my gosh, 5 and 7. And that's, I mean, it's like a 30-hour flight. So I wasn't sure. I'm sure there's some shorter flights, but we didn't get that one. We were on a 30-hour flight. So, yeah, I was really nervous about how it was going to go down, but they did great. And we just felt like it was really important for our older two to get a sense of where their sisters were born and where they were living and just have empathy around the whole situation. So it wasn't like we all just showed up at home and then, you know what I mean? They were very much a part of the process. And I think it was really good for them.
So before you traveled the first time, had you already been matched?
Yeah, so you get matched. This is also just, it's kind of crazy. And every situation is different, right? Some people get matched and get like weekly updates on how their child is doing, their health checks, their weight. We got matched relatively soon. I think we got matched like 6 or 7 months after we started the process, which is fast.
Oh, wow.
But then we couldn't go for another 13 months. So for those 13 months, like we heard nothing.
Wow.
Like, no, yeah. I mean, and that was the hardest because you just don't know how your child's doing.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
Yeah. And, but I've had friends who got the health checkups, and I think for them it was so emotional. They would just be bawling every week when they got it. So for me, maybe it was better that I didn't. I just said my prayers and were like, it'll be okay. When we go, and surely they're in good hands. So, yeah.
Well, and I was wondering 2 things. How old were they at the time? And then the second is, were they in good hands?
Yes and no. So when we got matched, they were 2.5, 3.5. And then, by the time we got home, they were 3.5 and Priya was almost 5. So it was, it's so tricky. What's nice about India is that social workers run the orphanages. And so to some degree, the government makes sure that the kids have food. But I mean, I would say their orphanage was better than some of the other orphanages in the area. Like when we were there, we heard about, there was an orphanage like 40 minutes away. They got in trouble because they were burning the kids with spoons to discipline them.
Oh my goodness.
So, yeah. And so if you put that into perspective, it was like, okay, our girls get to go to a school like right behind the alley and they're fed. And the aunties seemed like, they were caring and they were clothed and they were bathed, if you will, like in a bucket of cold water. So I could tell that they were under decent care. Like, was it my home? No, right? You're so excited to get them home. Mm-hmm. But I felt good knowing like they're doing the best they can. And for the most part, it was good care.
See, and I can recognize that feeling of kind of knowing that your kids or the kids are being cared for, but maybe just not feeling like they're being cared for like you're going to care for them. And this has been kind of a thought recently with our foster daughter, because I can't get out of my head the fact that she was in the hospital in the NICU when she was first born for like 15 days. And of course, the NICU nurses are wonderful and they're caring for all the children, but there's no parents coming to visit her and spending hours with her every day, holding her and feeding her. And it's just not the same as if she had a foster or adoptive parent that was there for only her.
Oh, absolutely. And when you visit the kids, you feel it and you sense it, because children just smother you. You know, they just want you to hold them and love on them, and just all that physical touch that they either, you know, missed out on or are not getting enough of, because there's only so many aunties trying to just meet the needs of these kids. And so it just breaks your heart. You just want to take all of them, but you know that you can't do that.
Yeah. So at the time when they were in the orphanage, I'm assuming they didn't speak any English. Is that right?
Yeah, no, they spoke Telugu.
I've never heard of that.
I know. Well, there's so many languages spoken in India. That they're from South India, and that's one of the many languages. And so we were like Google translating words, trying to communicate with them. And oh my gosh, it was so funny. At one point, we were on an airplane flying from their town up to Delhi, which is where the embassy is, and my daughter was sitting with me, you know, one of my daughters, and the whole time she was like, na, 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 and I didn't know what she was crying hysterically about for like 20 minutes.
Oh.
And finally this man, like across the aisle, is like, Nana means daddy. And I was like, oh, and I like, you know, passed her off to my husband quickly. And I was like, gosh, I could have saved so much English if we only knew.
Oh my goodness. What was it like the very, very first time that you met them?
Oh my gosh. It was crazy, truthfully, because we were supposed to, you know, we flew in, we had like a day to get acclimated to the time zone, which is like 12 hours different. And then we were supposed to meet them that night in their orphanage, and our country representative's flight got delayed and he couldn't make it in that night. And so obviously we were devastated, and we had to meet them at a courthouse the next morning for the first time. So we didn't get to go to like their home turf, right? We had to meet them in this weird building that none of us had ever been in. And there were all these other people there for their own court cases, which was just awkward because you meet in this like hallway, if you will. So we got there and the auntie walked in with these, I mean, they were so cute. They had dressed them up in these ornate little dresses and had bangles on, and we were just itty bitty, teeny tiny. And the girls saw us, and they were certainly like curious, but they were so scared that they hid behind all these chairs and wouldn't come out.
Oh.
I know. And so it broke your heart because you just want to run right up to them and pick them up and hug them.
Yeah.
But this is a really remote part of India too, where people of other races don't visit often. So I don't think they'd ever seen a Caucasian person in their life.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah. And even people that were in the court building were so enamored with my daughter, who has blonde hair and blue eyes, that all these people wanted to take pictures with her. And so she was freaked out. So that was going on simultaneously.
Oh my goodness.
But we had, you know, kids are like the best secret weapon, because I think if I would have gone up to our daughters and tried to coax them out, they would have just stayed back there. But my son and my daughter went up to them and like gave them markers and gumdrops, and they trusted them. And so they came out and kind of played around with each other. And that's how we broke the ice. And yeah. And then after the court, we got to go back to their orphanage. And it was like the minute we stepped on their soil, it was completely different. Like you could tell they just were more comfortable. They let us pick them up and hug us. And then the rest was history, if you will. So,
wow, that is so interesting. So the first time that you visited, were you just kind of exploring the area, or did you actually meet them that first time?
No, we actually met them. So we weren't allowed to go see them until we had our court date.
Oh.
So we flew in just for, and not every state is like this. Like if you adopt from a different state in India, some don't require you to go to court, but their state, we had to go to court to grant the adoption. So we flew in, met them. We got to go to their orphanage for like 3 days and see them and play with them and get to know them. And then because of all the holidays and festival, we went in January. So it was like there were so many holidays and days that the government was shut down that we couldn't get their passport and all of the information that we needed in order to take them home. And they told us it was going to take 5 weeks.
Oh.
And I was, yeah. And at the time, we had just bought a one-way ticket there because we didn't know if we were going to be able to take them back. And then I thought, gosh, there's no way. I can't stay in like a hotel room with my 2 older kids and now our 2 adopted kids for 5 weeks.
Yeah.
There was not even like a green patch of grass, you know? We were like in a city.
Yeah.
So we came home, kind of got everything ready, and then my husband and I just went back for the second 2-week trip when we got to bring them home, which was awesome.
Oh,
because
okay.
I think it was like better that it was just the 4 of us and we could have all that like sweet bonding time. And I also wasn't attending to the older 2's needs, right?
Yeah. Okay. So that makes sense because I was going to ask how you flew home with 4 children.
No. I'm not even sure how I would have done that, right?
I dread taking a 1-hour flight with 2 children. I don't know. It's
that
tough.
flight home was long. I'll tell you that much.
Bet.
I mean, they had never seen, you know, the TV screens on the back of the chair. So they're just constantly like pushing them all the time. And you're like, no, you need to sit down and sleep. And they're like,
that is so
No.
cute. How did they adapt to speaking English?
You know, my youngest, she picked it up so quickly. I mean, she picks up every language so quickly. So for her, it was no problem at all. But for my daughter, Priya, she had a lot of ear issues. She kept getting reoccurring ear infections. And then it went on for years. And so we could tell there was fluid in her ear and that something wasn't right. And it was taking her longer to learn English. And then we finally figured out that there was just all this tissue in her ear from untreated ear infections from India that we were able to take care of and get rid of. And now she can hear great. So her English has been a little bit slow, but she's doing amazing.
Do they remember their native language?
No, not anymore.
Wow.
You know, that might be something that we look into down the road because there are some Telugu associations here that do like fun events and cultural dances and things like that. So I think it would be cool. But for now, we're just gonna just work on English and reading.
That makes sense. You mentioned earlier about the culture and how you have Indian friends and you're familiar with a lot of what happens in the Indian culture. So what differences have you incorporated in your life or their lives since they've been with you?
Sure. So a lot, Priya, I love that because she's older, she has such this love of India in a way that maybe Ari doesn't remember. So Priya is like my spicy queen. The girl can eat food so spicy, it'll make your head spin. So we do a lot of cooking and, ordering Indian food and spices. And to this day, that is still like her favorite food. So obviously food is a big cultural aspect. We celebrate different holidays with friends. And it's interesting because depending on where you live in India or where your family's from, the holidays are quite different and the meanings are quite different. So a lot of our friends here are from all over the country. So we get to see different aspects of how they celebrate. So we'll get together with friends to celebrate Diwali. We'll dress up. We'll light candles. Gosh, we celebrate at school. We do Holi. We watch a lot of movies about India. My girls, they take Indian dance classes, which they love. So, and then it's just, being around friends, I think, cultural things come into play, right? Like you're talking about things so yeah, that's kind of what we do in a nutshell.
You're all in, it sounds
Yeah,
like,
you
as far
kind
as
of
the
have to
culture is
be.
concerned. Yeah.
Well, my biggest fear as a parent is that they're going to go to college and have this identity crisis and not have a good understanding of like, who they are and where they came from. I don't want them to ever feel that way.
I think all adoptive parents can agree with that or can relate to that, and especially adoptive parents who are adopting a child of a different culture.
Yeah, I would hope so. I have friends that are adoptees who didn't have that experience growing up, and it's been really hard for them as an adult, or in their mid-20s. They kind of went through this phase of being really angry about it, which I completely understand. So I've learned a lot from them too, of like what not to do.
And it's kind of tough to swallow too, that as a parent, you can have only the best intentions. You can work really, really hard to do what you think is right, and you can still get it wrong. That's terrifying to me.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, even just like dressing up for them for holidays, I feel self-conscious because I don't want to misrepresent. But for my girls, they're like, "Oh, mommy, you're so beautiful in that," right?
Aww.
And it's like it's just such a hard thing to balance of wanting to do them proud and not, you know what I mean? Not offending anybody else or making sure you do it right. Yeah, I know that we are certainly not perfect, but we're trying.
Yeah, and I feel like there are situations like that too, like the one that you described, where maybe there will be people who are offended, and most likely there will be a lot of people who aren't offended. But at the end of the day, that's what makes your kids happy, and that's what makes your family happy.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I can't worry about if I look ridiculous, with bendies all over my face that my girls did. Like, it's fine, right? They love it. They love it. Like that's one of their favorite things about India, I think, are the clothes. And we've had some incredible hand-me-downs of these gorgeous dresses. So anytime they can dress up and twirl around and put bendies on their face, they love it.
So cute. So how did your biological children react when they first came home, when the girls first came home?
Sure. I think, fortunately, my kids were old enough that it was sort of like perfect timing. Like, I think if my daughter was much younger, she would have had like severe sibling jealousy, right? She wouldn't have been ready to be an older sister. But because she was 5, she was so excited. And I think there was this sort of honeymoon phase, if you will, where everybody was on their best behavior and everyone was so lovey-dovey and excited to be around each other. And, my son would want to like pick up his sisters and show all his friends. And it was so sweet, but it's almost better when that wears off and they start bickering, because then you're like a real family and it settles in.
Yeah, that's true. That's so funny. So do they all go to the same school? I'd imagine maybe their ages are different enough they go to different schools.
They go to the same school right now, but we are going to maybe switch it up next year just for different learning needs and things like that. So
cool. That is so cool. So I would like to hear about your book.
Sure. So my book, I never really intended to become a children's author, if you will. My background's in interior design. So when we got home, and when the girls started to really absorb all that they had gone through, and their English was well enough to communicate their feelings and thoughts and fears, they started asking me a lot of questions. Like, okay, wait a second. Especially my youngest, she is so funny. She'll be like, wait a second. You got on an airplane and you came to get me, and why did you, and how did you find me? And, like she just goes on and on. So
understandable.
Right. And so I felt like I was repeating myself all the time to explain it, because processing it is so confusing for a little child. They're just like constantly trying to make sense of this new situation. And then they also have fear about not going back. So I decided to start writing down all of their memories because I was worried that they would forget them. And I wanted to, just think back on it with them and talk about it. So I started writing it all down. And then I decided that it would be fun to put it into a book format to read to them. And so they were very much a part of the process. And then after a while, I realized, hey, this is helping my kids. And I wonder if this could help other families because it's opening up a lot of doors for conversation that we maybe wouldn't have had. It's helping them talk about the things that were frustrating or hard. And so that's really where the idea was born.
Okay. So is it like a storyline that follows two children, or is it more of like a journal? What's the format?
No, it's a personal account of what my kids went through. And it's told from Priya's perspective because she is the oldest and she remembers what happened vividly. So it really starts with their journey in India. It briefly talks about kind of what they went through. It talks about living at the orphanage. It talks about how we met and how it was scary. And then what it was like to move here and all the unexpected occurrences and changes and surprises that came up. Because what I found when looking for adoption stories for my kids, there wasn't really anything that spoke of a transition. I found a lot of like generic stories, and some are really sweet, but they just didn't hit the nail for like, hey, I went through this too. And to tell your kids, like, it's absolutely fine that you were scared to death of the dog, or that you didn't want to try new foods, or that the clothes were different than what you were used to. These are all like really normal, hard, confusing, and sometimes funny things, right? Mm-hmm. So that's why I wrote it, because I just wanted to empower them through all that they had gone through and encourage them and make them feel like, hey, I'm brave and I can handle anything. And that's why I wrote it.
That is so special. And I'm also interested because as you're collecting your daughter's thoughts from a child's perspective, mm-hmm. I'm wondering if those thoughts or those memories will change at all through the perspective or through the eyes of an older child or maybe even an adult.
Oh, I'm sure they definitely could. But I felt like for the time being, I mean, I don't even know if she remembers how she felt, right? 3 years on. Like or even like, gosh, I don't know. I mean, they may, and she might be, as a teenager, be like, I don't know if I feel comfortable sharing this, right? So I was really careful and cautious in how I wrote it and honoring them and making sure that it was something that they both felt really good about, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it absolutely does.
But it's really fun because we'll talk about when they first saw us, and my daughter Priya will even be like, oh my gosh, I was so scared of you. You looked so white. You don't look as white as you did then, or things like that. And it's so funny. Yeah.
That is so cute. I was wondering too, what did they bring with them from India?
Not a lot. It's funny. We kept a little like keepsake box because I want to show them this stuff one day. Mm-hmm. But the clothes they were in, my daughter had on this like, kind of like a little play frilly dress, like a dress-up dress, and then these short little pajama shorts. And then they put her in these flip-flops that squeak, which was perfect for her. Because but she was my runner. So in the airport, it was like, there goes Ari,
Oddly enough, I accidentally ordered a pair of squeaky sandals for my Ari, and the squeakers came out real quick.
I didn't know you could take them out. Gosh, had I known.
Yeah, I mean, some pairs I think you can. I'm not sure if you can with all of them, but yeah, those get old real fast, but the kids like them.
Yeah, no, and that's like the same, like the light up shoes. I'm like, no, you can't have the light up shoes. But yeah, we had, so it was like, they really just had the clothes off their back. They didn't have any belongings at all. But little things like we picked up a necklace that somebody gave them at the airport, or we brought home the newspaper from when we were there. We brought home like some of the pictures what we were first given, just little like trinkets and tokens of our trip.
Do you have, or do you remember like the very first pictures that you either got of them or took of them?
Yes. So the pictures that we got of them are interesting because it's really kind of sad. Like they take a picture of the child probably when they first get into the orphanage. And I showed my daughters their pictures, and Ari looked at hers and she goes, I was really mad. Yeah.
Aww.
And they did. It looked like the life, like the soul had just been sucked out of their eyes. They looked so sad, and because they had gone through like just awful, stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is so sad. So, because I'm not super familiar with how orphanages work, from what I understand, that's not really a thing in the United States. I mean, I know that children can age out of foster care, but do children age out of orphanages?
They can. So in India, they have children's homes for the older kids. But yeah, you would hope that a child becomes adopted. I mean, we even have friends that are adopting a teenager there. You need family no matter what age, right? So I don't know what the cutoff is. I don't know if it's 18 or I'm not sure.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of really good things about programs that different counties or different states offer to help with children who have aged out of foster care. And I know there aren't resources everywhere, but there are a lot of places that will help with like housing and providing mentors and finances and that kind of thing. And I hope some of those resources are also available in other countries, but, understanding especially countries that are dealing with poverty, it's not probably the case.
I think that there are some, but I think it's limited. And I don't think that the resources that they provide are probably even, half as good as what we have here. There was a children's home behind the orphanage where my girls were. And so we actually walked in there one day by accident, thinking it was the front of the orphanage. And we got to see like where they slept and things like that. And it just wasn't, it's just sad, it's just a sad situation.
Yeah. And it's a reminder though, for people, especially people in the US who are able, considering adopting internationally or, even becoming an adoptive or foster parent in the United States, it's so important to take the leap if you're able to do so.
Yeah, I agree. But I mean, obviously it's not for everybody. I think all of my acquaintances or friends that have expressed interest, I mean, obviously I would encourage them because we are thrilled with our family and they're such a gift, but it's something that you really do need to dig into and just emotionally understand before you take that risk. But at the same time, I have heard so many people that have talked about it and wanted to and never took that risk. So like what you're saying, I do wish more people would just take that leap of faith.
Yeah, the ones that I find that are toying with the idea for years and years and they're doing tons and tons of research, those are the ones that I found are usually the ones that are the best. They're like the best prepared. They've read every book. They've listened to every podcast about it. Like they're the ones that are very well prepared to become foster or adoptive parents.
Yeah, that's true, right? Because they're so cautious and so aware to begin with. Like, can I do this? Can we provide? Can we emotionally handle this? Yeah, it's important to be thoughtful, right? That's like, did you have to go through a home study process where they come and interview you and ask you a bunch of questions and look at your house and things like that?
Yes. So we actually did that twice. We did it once for foster care. And then because we adopted outside of foster care, we had to do it a second time as well.
Yeah. So all that goes into that too. And I mean, and that's good because then you have to kind of take a step back and think about it more, right? Like what you're doing. And
yeah, absolutely. If somebody would like to purchase your book, where can they find it?
Sure. So my website is amandawall.org. And that has more information about the book and also has a direct link to Amazon where you can purchase it. I believe you can also find it at Barnes & Noble, Target, and some other online retailers as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Also, I was going to ask, I know a lot of my listeners are considering becoming adoptive parents or considering becoming foster parents.
Mm-hmm.
But for those out there who are interested in international adoption, where would you suggest that they start?
Yeah, I would say it's a great question. I'm trying to think where we started. I think, honestly, just calling agencies and asking them questions, because these are people that do this all, year round, and they talk to and work with many different types of families. Obviously, people have different types of fears or questions. And so I would say that would definitely be a good start. I also think that if you know of anybody who is an adoptive parent, that is a great resource. I can't tell you how many just emails I've answered from parents that have general questions or are considering it. And so I think anytime you know anybody in the community, I think most adoptive parents would be happy to help and answer any questions. And then there's a lot of books, right? Like talking about how to attach and bond with your child and just on international adoption for adults in general. But that's also why I wrote this book, because I knew that there would be families that just wanted one example of an international adoption story. And obviously our story is not going to be like a lot of other stories, but just to have some bit of clarity around what it could look like is great, right? And I think that there are blogs out there too that provide those types of stories.
Yeah, and your book is such a good idea. I'm so excited to read it. We also, I think if you're down, should do a giveaway on your book.
I'd love to. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, after we get done recording, we can talk the details. If there are listeners who have questions for you or want to get in touch with you, leave a comment, how should they contact you?
Yeah, so the best way is to go to my website, and under the contact portion, you can email me and I will get right back to you. And it's amandawall.org. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. Anytime.
Awesome. Cool. So cool. Before we wrap up, I would like to give a big thank you to this week's podcast editor, Ruben Andrews. Actually, every single week's podcast editor, Ruben Andrews. And as always, if you would like to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, we would definitely appreciate it. Leave your thoughts. Let us know what you liked about this episode and any suggestions you have for future episodes. And of course, Amanda, thank you so much. I can't wait to pick up your book, and I can't wait also to do the giveaway.
Thank you, Alex. I'm looking forward to the giveaway too, and I really appreciate the time and getting to speak with you today. That was fun.
Awesome. Me too. I think so too. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.